Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 finale of What If. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the opening Marvel Studios logo, because the entire season they've truncated it just to kind of quick version of it, but I love that we get the full version of it, and it's just a what if opening. It's not, whereas the typical opening includes like MCU scenes, this includes stuff from What If. I was like, that's actually really dope, because it is kind of its own thing, and it entails and encompasses the entire multiverse, but so it's just neat kind of being able to give it its own thing, because I want to say season 1 had just the regular, I think they gave it like the full like MCU open, like Marvel Studios thing, and then just like had Marvel Studios animated at the end like they've been doing this entire time. But I don't remember. Yeah, I think that's a new thing. Like, I'm fairly sure like they didn't have the animated. I mean, it's been a hot minute, but since season 1, but I'm fairly sure they didn't have that animated, but I could be completely misremembering. But either way, we're picking up where last episode left off. Once again, it's those things of like, I feel so stupid for not realizing stuff until Uatu ends up pointing it out. The comparison between Strange and Carter, both people lost away from their universes, being separated from the ones they love, and a multitude of things. Like, no matter what Peggy's done in her own universe, or even out here in the multiverse, even in 1602, couldn't be with the man that she loves. Then, Strange destroyed his universe in an attempt to bring back the woman he loves, and for these two people to, who are friends, who are colleagues, guardians of the multiverse, to be joined together again, it's kind of interesting. So Strange needs her help. He has, what was it, the Sanctum Immortium or something like that. It's almost like the Sanctum, like Immortal or something like that. I forgot what he called it specifically, but yeah, he's gathered up every universe killer in the multiverse, and it's him kind of continuing the Guardians of the Multiverse kind of on his own. But we see he's got a Loki locked up. We see a Thanos, obviously Ultron from last season. We even see a Peter, which I was like, interesting, because it's a kid Peter, so I guess that's maybe a universe where episode 2 happened, but instead of playing out the way it did in What If, Peter went on and just kind of went on the route that his dad, Ego, wanted him to. But nevertheless, he's trying to collect all these people, and so Strange is like, I need your help, because, and I love Peggy being like, one of them got away. He's like, how'd you know? She's like, Gremlins, Jurassic Park, Aliens. She's like, there's been so many movies examples of you collect enough of any dangerous thing, one of them's going to get out and cause some problems. So he needs her help capturing this person. And at first I was like, is it going to be another Doctor Strange? But he was like, her, and I was like, who is it then? It didn't even cross my mind that it would be Cohorty, because I forgot. He picked her up at the end of episode 6. I was like, yeah, so why isn't she with you? That's interesting. He's only with Peggy, and the universe he ends up dropping her off in is a universe where, sadly, Hydra won. Like, there is no Captain America or Captain Carter. The world fell to Hydra. And you see, what is supposed to be Mount Rushmore is just Mount Skullmore, I guess. I don't know what you're going to call it. But yeah, Red Skull's, head is carved into it. So, but obviously the Watcher's there. She's like, what are you going to do? You actually going to help this time, or are you just going to sit there and narrate? And it's like, right, he can't interfere. But for Peggy, it's like, once again, I'm going to do what I can. Because initially she wanted to go home, but it's like, I even love Strange saying, that fifth dimensional being with that big head and smooth voice or whatever. I'm like, yeah, Jeffrey Wright does have that good voice, doesn't he? I just love that line and the way he delivered it too. He was like, smooth voice or soothing voice or whatever he said, and the way Strange said it. But when we find out it is Cohorty, I'm like, okay, so they're going toe-to-toe. And I love her like, right, come on and fight. I mean, she gets hit, and she's like, yep, that was good. Yeah, you did good on that one. But yeah, her and Cohorty are in this together, because it turns out Strange is a liar, because he isn't just collecting universe killers, he's also collecting heroes. And that's why I'm like, wait, now that made me go, is that Peter he captured? Is that actually the same Peter from episode 2? Maybe it isn't a coincidence that he just happens to be in a kid form too. Which isn't to say that's the only universe where kid Peter has his father's abilities. I mean, he always had his dad's abilities. He just never was able to tap into them because he'd never been to his father's planet to awaken those powers. But it's always been there in him since he was born. But I'm wondering, is that supposed to be the exact Peter from episode 2? So, but yeah, he's trying to sacrifice all these powerful beings and use them as fuel for his forge because he's back to doing what he's doing before. And I love that being this overarching theme, especially because we've seen the continuation in Peggy. Peggy's story has been like this continuous arc from last season, from her story in episode 1 to her story in the season finale, now in episode 5, in episode 8, and now this, culminating and combining that with Strange's story. It's also kind of interesting too, making it like him kind of the big bad of this season. Because obviously he worked to be the good guy at the end of the season. Like, he made a mistake and he was trying to make up for that mistake, but eventually his grief got the best of him. I mean, oh my god, dude, it ties in so beautifully because the MCU is riddled with so much guilt and tragedy. Obviously, like season 4, I said season 4, Jesus. Phase 4 was kind of filled with a lot of, grief and tragedy, and that was like the grieving I keep talking about it like it's, because the MCU is often referred to as a TV show, so it is, I keep saying Phase 4, but I meant to say Phase 4, but I keep saying Season 4. But yeah, like Phase 4 was riddled with a whole bunch of grief in many different facets in different ways, from, WandaVision to Wakanda Forever, being some prime examples. Because I think WandaVision was the first thing we got in Phase 4, and then Wakanda Forever technically was the last one. Really, it's the holiday special, which even kind of dealt with grief in that regard too, because it's like, well, you dealt with a little bit of the Yondu stuff, plus Gamora not being there and how that's kind of left Peter feeling, so there's a lot of that. But yeah, we have these two characters who are driven by street. Jesus Christ, I got that so... I've never flubbed that hard. Stricken with grief is what I was trying to say. Jeez. But and it's so poetic that these characters would be at odds, and Cody would be at the center of that too. But yeah, they're trying to work together to stop Strange, because he's like, right, I went to you because I knew out of anyone you'd understand. You wanted to be back with Steve. Not only am I going to bring back Christine, I'm also going to bring back my universe. It's his way, because this wasn't enough of a penance, because it's like, yeah, it's just a reminder of what's out there in the multiverse and what he destroyed and what he lost, and he just couldn't let that go. All that power there, and it's like, I was so close. If I just had a little bit more. Mistakes I made, I'll work differently this time. And who knows what that would have done in the long run, what that would have cost the multiverse. His attempt to bring back his universe could have undone everything else, in the process. But nevertheless, you are also going to be killing a ton of people in the process, just for your own selfishness yet again. So Peggy ends up, as she kind of puts it, like a universe killer's jailbreak. We saw, who's the giant green demon thing with the swords? I'm like, what the hell is that? I'm like, are we supposed to remember where that's from? I'm like, that doesn't seem MCU familiar to me. I feel like I would remember something like that. Kind of looks like something you see in like a Shin Megami Tensei or something. I don't know what that thing is. Like, do let me know in the comments. I'm like, I have no idea what the hell that thing is. But obviously we see a lot of familiar faces. We see like Carol and Vision fighting it, duking out. We see kind of like a Western Loki, like pistols in hand and stuff. Which makes you wonder, like, is that supposed to mean this Carol or Vision were universe enders? Or were they like, because once again, they were a blend of universe killers and heroes. Like, he needed both. So, but like seeing everyone duke it out. Obviously we get our return of the zombies. It's like, and Coyote being like, yeah, zombies are kind of universal. Which I think is so interesting, because I'm like, the fact that she knows what zombies are, because it's like, this is supposed to be the Coyote from, maybe she was helping him for a while, maybe that's why because eventually she probably found out what he was up to, but she probably did work with him. So I was about to say, she's probably been to other universes and stuff. Because I was about to say, like, you're from obviously, like, the time frame you're from, there's no way you would know about zombies. So it must, because if you also notice too, she is speaking English. So it is most likely a situation of, like, she's probably worked with Strange. Who knows how much time has passed in between episode 6 and now. But she was working with him long enough to probably eventually find out about his plan. And yeah, and she's probably been on the run ever since she found out. Because she can also, like, jump to other universes too with her portal ability. So maybe she's been jumping from universe to universe trying to escape him, trying to find some help to probably undo what he's doing or stop him. But yeah, they go up against the zombies. Specifically, it's good old Scarlet Witch zombies back. So her and Coyote like duke it out, and like it almost seemed like Coyote like kind of like atomized her, like the way she kind of like took that energy around her and just kind of squished it. Kind of felt a little remnant of Agatha and Wanda's, the clashing of beams. It kind of felt very similar to that, like the end of WandaVision in that capacity. But then all the zombies kind of like kneel, and it's like, who did that? And it's Hela, not the Hela we knew from like episode 7. This is a good old fashioned Hela, who I love that she's like, oh yeah, ooh, zombies, like, I'm the goddess of death and stuff like that. She's like so kneel, and I love that line. It took me a second when Cody was like, yeah, didn't work out too well for the last woman that told me to kneel. I was like, who was that? I was like, oh right, the Queen of Spain. And I love when she threw Hela's like weapons back at her. She's like, excuse me, like she was so offended. I love Serta showing up, and it's like, you and them duking it out, because it's like, so I wonder, is that supposed to be a Hela before, like, from her universe, like either she's pulled from the MCU timeline and that's right before Serta ended up killing her, but she's probably from like a different universe that played out pretty closely to Ragnarok. So it's like, because she recognizes him, it's like, right, because he does kill her and destroy Asgard in Ragnarok. So it is kind of like the you type of thing, and them duking it out. So we have that. Then they end up running into Thanos, and it's a Thanos that's got all the gauntlets, not zombie Thanos with all the gauntlets, with all the Infinity Stones. But then he gets dusted because someone snapped. I was like, who was that? And it's Killmonger. I was like, hey! And then he was removed from the board. I was like, oh. I mean, I'm curious how people are going to feel about that twofold. I brought that conversation up previously when it turned out like Ronan ended up killing Thanos in in the first episode. I was like, right, because people like the whole how quickly Ultron killed Thanos in episode 8 of last season. So I was curious how people feel about it. Granted, he was snapped. So, and he also didn't see it coming, so he couldn't really prepare for it. But also, Killmonger was completely dispatched up pretty quickly. And I love that we brought that back just to kind of like, it's so interesting. Our big bad of the MCU dealt with just like that multiple times. And then also we have Killmonger, who was the main, set up to be a big bad last season, kind of took all that power, and we kind of removed him from the board immediately. Cody just like teleported him out of the armor. It's like, yeah, that one actually was me. And Peggy puts on the armor. It's like, yo, suiting up, getting ready to go against Strange. And it's like, wow, her having basically wearing essentially the gauntlet as armor now is so dope. So both of them going at it. Once again, I love Coyote's powers. Once again, I love me some speedsters. But like that, just in conjunction what she's able to do, and then Peggy using Infinity Stones and that shield, and she's able to just like teleport it, which, one of my favorite techniques. Oh god, what's it called again? It's Sora's technique from Kingdom Hearts. He would basically, because he can dematerialize and rematerialize his Keyblade in his hands. So basically, it teleports back to his hand when he throws it, so he can repeatedly toss the Keyblade, and I forgot what the technique's called. Strike rate. It took me a minute, but I finally remembered it. But yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, where she just kept throwing the shield and teleporting it and stuff, and like teleport it behind him and bop him in the head. Even like he ends up teleporting it and knocking it and making it hit Coyote. Like, I just love that whole sequence. And especially like when he's like trying to dump all those people in, he's teleporting all of them and about to dump them into the forge. But then we have like the back and forth where Coyote's like reversing everything and trying to take everyone back to their dimensions, and then they're falling and then going back up again, and it's just the back and forth, because you're like, which way is this going to go? This power struggle the needle keeps moving. It could go either way. And then ultimately they're falling again, and Peggy stops them with the time stone. But it's like, right, he's mastered time too, so there is too even a match. But even if it's an even match, he still has the upper hand, so he's still sacrificing everyone. So Hela throws her helmet, we see a Thor throw his hammer, like Peggy got all the armaments. I love that Coyote is able to use Thor's hammer. Like, it's so interesting that her powers can like go against, because she doesn't have to directly touch. It makes sense for Peggy to end up getting it, but I mean, because she did touch Mjolnir last season, but I'm sure she's worthy. But Coyote's able to use her powers to hold it, which I think is interesting. I wonder if it's at a technicality on her front. I mean, obviously it's a technicality, but I wonder if it's at a technicality. I know the character exists specifically for the show, but I wonder does a technicality like that exist in the comic books? I just think that's so interesting because it's like, yeah, I can wield it using my powers, and she's also got the 10 rings on her other arm. Peggy, like her armament, like when she's got like obviously the shield and sword looks so badass, plus the Infinity Stones, and like there's a whole bunch of weapons. I was like, she kind of went full Noctis here. If you're unfamiliar, Noctis is the main protagonist of the Final Fantasy 15. He basically has a whole bunch of weapons that can float around him, and he can like summon. He has like a weapon wheel that literally circles him, where he like dematerializes weapons, and they kind of can all attack at once like that. It's a very specific power that he has, so it kind of like gave me Noctis vibes. I love that line from Strange where he was saying that, oh, I already beat that armor once, and her Peggy being like, yeah, but I wasn't wearing it. I was like, yeah. I was like, that's a bold and badass line. But yeah, Strange goes full demon mode. He went there a little bit during the fight against Ultron last season, but he really didn't fully go because even this form is even more monstrous than his monster form from episode 4 of last season, because that was an amalgamation of everything. This is a more concentrated monster form. It's a physical manifestation of all his power and his grief morphed into this demon. He still manages to outdo all of them power-wise. It's like they can't really end up beating him. But I think at the same time, like Coyote, like some people did fall into the Forge, but Cody was able to say, I think most people, because I know at least Hela fell into there, but I think some people did, but most of the people Cody was able to save. I think it's kind of interesting too that Peggy ends up having all the Infinity Stones in her hand, and she just uses a power punch. Because I know snapping is enough to like, obviously it killed Tony, it messed up Thanos' arm and Hulk's arm from doing a snap. But I wonder, is it a little, you would assume, maybe because it's an animation thing, like, well, that's kind of glazed over that. But you'd assume her arm would be jacked up from that, because she is a regular human. Maybe because it's like you're also doing it for an attack. You're not doing it for the purpose of, like, doing something massive, like killing everybody, like Tony did in Endgame, or, wiping out half the universe, or reviving half the universe. It's maybe the scaling of it, even though you're using all the stones, like, once again, it's animation, so they're probably skirting the line with, like, would that really work without her, like, arm being completely, probably not even busted, her entire arm would probably explode from it, but yeah, we'll probably skirt around it. I don't know if that had, but once again, she had, like, all Infinity Stones in just one punch, so it's like, no armor or anything to kind of allocate all that power at once. It's just in her bare fist, so. But despite everything, Strange is still there, trying to fight back a little, but for him, it's like, at the end of the day, his grief is too strong. Even he can't stop it at this point in time, so. Him and, I love that moment, just Peggy on top of him, just, like, punching him, like, riding him down into the Forge, and Strange sacrifices himself. There's still a fragment of his humanity left that he stops the demon in him, and he ends up sacrificing himself. And when the light explodes, Peggy finds herself with the Watcher, and it's like, yep, this is where I watch everything. Coyote was returned to her world, and we find out Strange's world is back, and so it's Christine, but because of the sacrifice he made, he never existed in a universe, nor will he ever be born. He wiped himself completely from existence. That's sad as shit, which makes you wonder, how does the Sorcerer Supreme situation, how does the Doctor Strange situation work in that universe? Who will fill that void, I mean, Wong eventually became Sorcerer Supreme. Like, will someone else step up to fill that void in that universe? That universe is not going to have any version of Doctor Strange. Like I said, not unless that mantle ends up going to someone else. I mean, obviously Strange is Strange, but still, like, someone ends up eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme, I'm assuming. But that's really sad as shit. Like, and even Peggy says it herself. It's like, after all that sacrifice, he doesn't even get to bring back his world and bring back Christine. Maybe on some level, he might not be able to be with her, but in Strange's mind, maybe there's some level of I got to make up for what I did, even if I don't get to enjoy it. Christine's alive, and that's all that matters. I might not be with her. I might not exist anymore. It's sad because even though Watcher considered him a friend and like he was an ally and a friend, we shared drinks, we saved the universe together, not just the universe, the multiverse together, and it's just sad that he ended up kind of his grief got the best of him, and it's just. I mean, we've seen time and time again, once again, back to phase 4 of what grief can do to someone, like the tragedies that can be committed. And, when you don't have, I mean, Peggy's in so much pain, and yet she didn't cross that line because she's like, Steve wouldn't want me to do it. I didn't talk about it, but I love that Strange tried to pull, the other Strange in that universe from episode 4, he did the same thing to him where it's like, oh, here's Christine trying to trick that other Doctor Strange, and he tried to do the same thing here to Peggy, but she wouldn't bite because it's like, it's what I would want, and but it's like, you're not Steve, so. But at the end of the day, for the Watcher, it's like, I don't need to interfere because this universe has a protector. It has its Peggy Carter, so. That's why I never felt like I needed to interfere. So I'm wondering, like, going forward, would that be a situation of if the Guardians of the Multiverse ever had to get together again, they would be one person short, which, I mean, technically 2 people short because Killmonger broke bad and so did Strange, and now he no longer exists. It almost makes you wonder, well, because everyone else went back to their universes and has no memory of anything, so none of them would remember Strange or Peggy anyway, because they're the only ones who remember everything. Well, Killmonger and Zola from that universe most likely did as well, but still. I'd assume that Natasha from episode 8 that ended up in the same world as episode 3, that Natasha probably remembers everything, but no one else does, so. But like I said, I'm curious, is that going to be the role of Peggy? Maybe Uatu is going to be like our main person, but maybe from time to time we cut back to Peggy and her journey. Because obviously she still has so much story to go if we're going by like MCU timeline wise, because she's still at Winter Soldier. Civil War hasn't happened yet. Neither has Infinity War and Endgame, even though she's kind of been through her own Endgames technically twice now. So. But I'm curious, are they going to make her like a fixture of like, yes, she'll be like next to Uatu, she'll be like our central figure in these stories going forward? Will she kind of be a sole guardian of the galaxy? I mean, I keep saying galaxy. Guardian of the multiverse? Or will she put together a different squad every time? I'm so curious to see how they handle that. I mean, also like, what would a big bad for the next season look like? I think it's interesting though that she's like, well, I'm ready to get back to my universe, but we could take the scenic route. And it's like, so what do you have to show me? He's like, oh, just you watch. And what's the last shot? Because I was like, this was done after Loki season 2. So, of course, they're not going to be able to incorporate it. But then we have the image at the end, which is Idris Elba. So I was like, hey, they did it. Because I just thought about Loki. I was like, man, they didn't. I was like, that most likely be something they covered in season 3 because this was done. I mean, I don't know when they finished this. Because obviously Loki's been sitting in a can for a bit. Season 2 of Loki was sitting in a can for a little bit, so I don't know. Once again, who knows how much everyone's talking. I don't know if that was a last minute thing that was put together after Loki season 2 had aired. They decided to add that little tail. I don't know if you'd be able to slap that in animation wise just at the very end. Maybe you can. I don't know, but I think it's kind of a nice acknowledgement of just like, right, because Loki stands in that same pocket as well, and that is something they can probably like touch on, especially for multiversal beings. Carter being in her position and also Loki being in his and Uatu, so that'd be something interesting to see if they tackle in the future. I mean, that is like mainline MCU and that oversees the multiverse, which this does as well, so that'd be interesting to tackle and see how those two, especially considering Loki's like the god of stories now too, and Uatu being the narrator, so it's very befitting, and I'd be curious to see if they do anything with that. Not necessarily live action, but even just animated wise to see if they'll do anything with that. But yeah, the show is coming back for a 3rd season. I don't know when they started. I think they were still working on season 2, maybe script wise, maybe even animation wise. But I think this was still going on during the pandemic. Because I think maybe they like finished season 1 and immediately went into season 2, so like they might have been like in production like around the same time. But what I was reading online, season 3 is already currently in development. It'll probably still be like maybe 2025 by the time we get the next season. I wouldn't be surprised. Once again, animation takes a long time, but yeah, I'm excited to see what those next those stories next season takes us. What are some overarching stories we're going to get? What remixes are we going to get? It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of that ends up taking us going forward into the next season. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.